So PPD, or Personal and Professional Development, is the requirement that all students have at the Ifoa to record aspects of their work experience through our online portal. So PPD applies to students who joined us from September 2017 onwards, and as of September 2018 this year, all existing students who would have been under the previous work experience Form A or Form B or work-based skills need to have moved on to the new PPD regime. The way in which PPD is judged is quite different to how our previous work regimes were assessed. So current students and students who've been with us for many years, when they were submitted their either what's called their work experience Form A or their work-based skills document, we were looking for a much more verbatim description of the activity that we were doing. So it would be much more focused on giving us real detail in terms of the task they were undertaking. So the way in which PPD is judged is quite different. When students are submitting their PPD logs, they have to fill in two sections. Firstly, the activity description, a very light touch overview of what they've done, no more than 250 characters, so they have to be quite concise. The second area is what's called the learning outcome, and this is the main way in which PPD is judged. And what we're looking for students to articulate is things like what were the success factors of that particular project, what went well, what didn't go well, how did they identify the success or the fail categories, if their work was peer reviewed, what was the feedback they received from their colleagues, and fundamentally, if they did their task, what would they do differently in the future. We're not interested as much in the real detail of what they were doing, but have they learned, what have they learned, and fundamentally, what would they do again differently in the future. And we would expect students in that area to have at least 100 to 200 words, 2 to 3 paragraphs worth of text where they've reflected on what they've done. So the first reason that PPD is important is because it allows the Ifoa to make a judgment on your competency within the workplace. So whereas your exams are the test of your academic knowledge within an exam setting, PPD is about taking all the knowledge and skills that you gathered from sitting your exams and applying it within your everyday tasks and activities. So the second reason that PPD is important is because you as students need to demonstrate your understanding of the wider business environment. The sectors and the professions that actuaries work in these days is quite broad, and the everyday challenges that businesses face change on an everyday basis, and PPD is about capturing your knowledge, your understanding and your ideas about what's happening in the everyday world of work. So the third reason of why PPD is so important is because we want to instill a much more reflective practice into our actuaries before they come to qualify. So when you come to qualify as either an associate or a fellow, you have what's called your CPD, your continuing professional development, that you have to do every year of when you're a qualified member of VAS. And that again is quite a reflective practice on looking back at your own training and development once you have qualified. So we've decided that leading up to qualification, we wanted students to take a much more reflective practice in developing their PPD logs. It's less about a verbatim description of the activities that you have done, but needs to be much more reflective in terms of the things that you've learned and the things that you were taking into consideration when doing activities again, because that kind of activity will what you'll be doing after you come to qualify with us. So the first category within the PPD framework is effective communication. So within this category there are between 10 to 12 different competencies that students can pick and choose from when they're looking to submit evidence of their work-based practice. So for example, one of the areas that students could submit, one of the competencies, is present actuarial results to an informed but non-technical audience. So here we would look for students to give examples of presentations that they've given, what went well with the presentation, what went badly, did they convey their message successfully to the audience, and what feedback did they receive. So the second category within PPD is problem solving and decision making. Again, there is between 10 to 12 different competencies that students can pick and choose from when they're looking to evidence their work. So for example, a quite common one that actuaries choose is analyse and validate data sets from a model. So this was where you within your workplace might, when you're doing some data analytics analytics, some modelling, particular piece of work. You could then seek to get some peer review from your colleagues. Was the activity a success? Was it a failure? Did you do something different to what you did before? Have you done something which you've done every day for every week of your job, and you've just had that validation that what you've done is correct? So the third category within PPD is professionalism. Again, there's a range of 10 to 12 different competencies that students can choose from, and professionalism is a very important area because it's where we're looking for students to be able to demonstrate their professional and ethical considerations when they undertake their everyday practice. So for example, an area that students could look to submit is where the competency demonstrate the understanding of the importance of confidentiality. So here may be an example where students have been put in a position where clients are asking for details that go a bit above and beyond what they're allowed to give, or where they're in a particular difficult situation dealing with a stakeholder where they've had to withhold some information or be very careful about the things that they have chosen to do. So some of the learning outcomes could be things that they would do differently. Did they seek advice when they were going to give that piece of advice to that stakeholder, or did they speak to any colleagues about situations that they have experienced in the past?